Hey, what's up YouTube? Welcome to today's video where I am going to bring you the best magic fighting build in the league, hands down. And as you can see here, it is 1 Deli Orb, 2, 3, 4, 5 Deli Orbs, or maybe even 6. For 100% Deli. Now, I have been searching for a build that... What just happened? Well, I have been searching for a build that could actually do all the content. And that's just a little fluke. You don't need to worry about that. I like to include everything in the video. But basically, 100% Deli has been a dream of mine to magic find. Now, you probably never want to magic find 100% Deli because it's literally just a waste of your time. But this is kind of a proof of concept video that shows you that you can actually do it. And it really shows how strong this actual build is because the build is relatively tanky. So just ignore what you saw earlier, but I just like to leave everything in. But basically, this build is Kinetic Blast with Corrupting Fever and Reap for single target. And it is played on champion. Now, the reason why this build is so good is pretty much because you're leveraging the explosions. Now, you might be thinking, what about the rarity? How do you actually link item rarity gem? Well, this build allows you to use Grease Embrace because you actually have a shield in order to use shield charge. So item rarity gem you can still use on Corrupting Fever if you want to link to it. And it ends up being around a build of 100 Quant, which is an insane amount. And a lot of people kind of underestimate Quant and think that it's not that great, but that couldn't be further from the truth. Quant is still king, in my opinion, as long as you have some baseline of rarity. But as you can see here, it can actually clear 100% Deli map. I was very, very surprised. Well, clear is kind of an interesting word for it, but this was actually had some HP mods on the map. And Alpha Temple, as you may know, is very, very annoying to clear. And wow, it actually looks like a nuclear bomb is going off. But as you can see here, very, very smooth build. Now, you might be wondering, what does it look like when you're not trolling and trying to magic find 100% Deli map? Well, it looks a lot better. So here is me doing more of the map. And this is on 80% Deli, but you can see here, the damage does look a lot better. And it is kind of laggy because the map is just absolutely crazy and has a billion mobs in it. And we are doing some skittering Deli Orbs. And I will be releasing a video on the strat that I've been using for the past few days. And I have found a few apothecaries on this character. And I also found a Mirror of Calandra on this character for all it's worth. Now, my favorite part about this build is definitely the fact that it is tanky. Now, the main problem with Magic Find builds is that it really just dies right now because you don't really have the Headhunter buffs. If you look right here, you can see I only have 14 Headhunter buffs. And 14 Headhunter buffs is nowhere near enough to keep you alive anymore. Especially how Headhunter no longer has max res. And it's just kind of a sad ordeal because I played a lot of bow builds and I really like attack-based Kinetic Blast, but it just doesn't survive in today's world of magic finding. So that is why I like this build so much. But I do think that this is the best Magic Find build, hands down. And the main reason you want to play Magic Find is we are in an ever important state of finding the last loot goblins left in raid class. Loot goblins are pretty much the only reason why you should even play the game. If you don't enjoy fighting loot goblins at this point, Path of Exile is probably not going to be that fun because you're pretty much just been farming Legion or Expedition or Heist for the past month. Now, a nice part about this build is that the previous Magic Find builds were not tanky enough, as I said, because there's not enough Headhunter buffs, but now this build doesn't even need Headhunter. You can actually put on a Bisco's Leash. Headhunter actually doesn't give you that much damage on this build because it's a physical damage over time build. So already, if you look at the price, I have previously said that Headhunter is necessary in every single Magic Find build. Well, the problem with that is that Headhunter actually costs 152 Divine Orbs. You can play this build for much, much cheaper than 152 Divine Orbs. I have tested Mage Blood, Headhunter, and Bisco's Leash out. And Bisco's Leash actually feels the best to play with Inspired, even over Headhunter. I do think that Headhunter offers a little bit more defense, but Bisco's Leash is actually the fastest clearing belt out of them all, and it actually gives you an extra 100% rarity over these other two options. So first off, what does this build actually use? We use Corrupting Fever for clear. Now what Corrupting Fever does is it applies a Corrupting Blood debuff on the enemies you hit. So we are going to be using Kinetic Blast in order to hit the enemies. And the reason why we want to use this skill instead of Tornado Shot, and Tornado Shot is also another very good skill, is that we actually gain access to a shield. And what getting access to a shield does is it means we have a spammable movement skill like Shield Charge. And we can also use this shield right here, which gives us 8% quantity of items found, which is a huge benefit for the build. Now, Reap is our single target skill, so we pretty much put it in a 5 link with Corrupting Fever. and then we pretty much spam the skill when we already have the Corrupting Fever debuffs on the enemy, and we want to add some extra bit of single target in. So if you actually look at Path of Building, Corrupting Fever with 10 stacks does around 10 million damage, or 1 million damage, and then Reap does 1 million, so the build does around 2 million single target DPS when all of the debuffs are on the enemy. Now, in order to scale any spells, we will always want to scale it with gem levels, damage over time multiplier, physical damage over time multiplier, and percent physical damage generic. And in this build, we do want to emphasize on Flask Effect, and Flask Effect is really important because if you look at our Quant here and Rarity, and our Quant and Rarity is actually extremely high, so let's go see here. With the item Rarity gem in, you can see we're only at 90 and 364, but because this build actually has Flask Effect, we are actually at 105 and 530%. Or so, which is an insane amount. So right here, this one right here. So you can see 105 and 600% rarity, which is actually a crazy amount. So we are trying to fit in as much Quant and Rarity as possible while still being able to clear the 80% Deli maps. Now this is really important because the name of the game is trying to find these loot goblins and trying to get as many divines as possible. And without maximum Quant and Rarity, you will not get as much of a payout when you actually do find the goblins. Now, first off, we're going to go over the tree because the tree is a little bit interesting. Now, the reason we rely on cluster jewels is pretty much because it is hard to get generic percent physical damage on the tree. So if you can look at these nodes here, we have percent physical damage, percent physical damage, percent physical damage, and then we have some more here, percent physical damage, percent physical. So these are the two same things. Battle Hardened, Master the Fundamentals, and Furious Assault. And the only other source of physical damage and physical dot multi on a tree are this node right here, Vanquisher. There's also this one you could potentially take, and then there's this little cluster over here with physical dot multi and then some more physical damage. So overall, that's pretty much all the generic physical damage on a tree that we're able to get. So that's why we prioritize on these large clusters. Now, we do want to prioritize the reservation efficiency because this does allow us to run our auras. We are running Malevolence, Determination, Purity of Elements. And the reason we have Purity of Elements is because since our gear is so restricted to uniques, it is very hard to get Chaos Res. But it actually allows us to use a Watcher side right here with Chaos Res. And we do get damage leech as life while affected by Vitality. And since we're also running Petrified Blood, that means our life can't actually recover over 50%. So as long as we're leeching, we'll always have perma-leech as we are never able to keep our life above 50%. And the nice part about that is if you look at our flask, our Divination Distillate down here, or you can't really see it, but you can see this little tiny bar down here. And that's the Divination Distillate actually going off. And you can see here, it lasts for the whole amount of time because... wait, maybe it didn't last the full amount of time. But yeah, you can see here, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, because the life never reaches full. So that is something that's very important. Now, the reason behind playing Champion is because we can actually steal the Gladiator Explode. So we are using 2 Forbidden Jewels over here. And this is the Gratuitous Violence that gives us Gladiator Explode. And Gratuitous Violence is somewhere else. I think it is... I don't even know where it is. Do I even have Gratuitous Violence? Oh, it's over here. Or one... Where's my Gratuitous Violence? Oh, it's over here, right? Nope. It's over here. It's over here. Do I not have this gem in? Oh no, have I been playing without Gratuitous Violence the whole time? There's no way. Oh, right here, right? Yeah. Woo, man, I was gonna say there's no way I've been not playing with Gratuitous Violence. So we have this one here, and then we have some gems. These ones, you need a Corrupted Blood Jewel. Otherwise, you're gonna die to Corrupted Blood. And I got a life, physical damage over time multiplier, and rarity. So I am actually prioritizing rarity even on the rare jewels. And then possible escape right here. I go over here to get the Flask Effect, because Flask Effect is pretty much Quant and Rarity. And I do a little bit of a weird pathing over here because this actually allows us to get some life nodes and also the Flask Mastery, which gives us 10% increased effect. We actually have 20% increased effect on the tree. Now, this Elegant Hubris right here allows us to ignore attribute requirements. And since our gear is all uniques, it's incredibly hard to get attributes, especially since most of the wands are 188 int requirement. So it pretty much means that you have to get this keystone. And this is an Elegant Hubris with Caspiro. And this gives you so that you don't need to worry about attributes. Now, this Elegant Hubris is special because it's incredibly point efficient. It's actually only 2 points for 80% rarity, which is a huge deal. And then we also take this Unnatural Instinct over here, and this does allow us to get a little bit of AoE, life regen, and most importantly, some more physical damage, which actually helps us out a lot. So overall, and then some more skill duration. So very point efficient Unnatural Instinct over there. Now, Impossible Escape and Megalomaniac, this is something that I actually teched into the build, and I don't know if this one actually really exists. But the reason we have Lead by Example is because we have General's Cry on left click. So every single time we General's Cry, you can see we get a onslaught buff. And as the General's Cry ticks down, it disappears, and we immediately move this again or press this again. And it allows us to keep our General Cry up the whole time and onslaught buff the whole time. And that is a huge difference because it pretty much means we have perma onslaught. And that means while you're looting, having an onslaught helps out a lot when you're looting. And this is actually huge for Magic Find. And Spiked Concoction pretty much just gives you 10% flask effect, 10% flask effect whenever you use a flask, which actually helps us out because it gives us more quant and rarity. Now, next up, we have the gear overview, and the gear, you probably want a 1.5 attack speed wand with +1 physical skills gems, +1 spell skill gems, and damage over time multiplier. The one that you're probably going to find the most, because it's the easiest way to craft it, is you want to find a fracture damage over time multiplier, and then +1 spell, +1 fizz, and then you reforge fizz with prefixes cannot be changed, and it's guaranteed to get physical dot multi, and then you craft on attack speed. So it's a pretty easy craft as long as you can get the base. And I think this wand costs around 20 divines, but you could get a much cheaper option and not go for +2 spells or +2 fizz. Now, we do use Greed's Embrace as it is the best chest piece. It does give a lot of rarity and quant. If possible, you want to get +1 to gems or +2 to duration, or you can get generic % damage or reduced crit. Now, this node is pretty good. On the Centauris, I also have reduce extra damage taken from crits, and that can mean that you can become crit immune if you pretty much just take, I think this one right here. So you can take 30% reduced damage from crits, then you have 50% here, and then you have 30% here, so you're actually immune to crits if you really wanted to, and that allows you to run the crit mod on the map. So this helmet is pretty much synthesized rarity, double rarity roll, like life roll, and then a crafted rarity roll from Janus. And the amulet, this one's going to be kind of hard to find, but generally you want a quant and rarity amulet, and anything else is good on top. And I did find this one. It's actually 12% quant and 32% rarity. And somehow I got lucky and it had a 21% damage over time multiplier. Now, Ventors, I got pretty good ones. You don't really need as good of these ones because I actually am way overcapped. So you can see here, my resists are out of this world. And that's pretty much because I want to do Eldritch Altars and not have to worry about having too little cold and lightning res. So I have 2 of these Ventors. You want to prioritize quant and rarity. And this one here, make sure your quant is as high as possible. Now, Sedimas are pretty much the only item that has quant on them. You can also go for Orsees if they're cheaper. And you want to find the implicit of cursed enemies with vulnerability, and that makes it so that they take more physical damage over time. Now, for belt slot, Headhunter is definitely king. If you're a rich person, unlike me, you would probably go for a rarity implicit Headhunter. I think those go for like 200 divines or 1 mirror. And Goldworm is pretty much non-negotiable. Some good options are +1 gems, +2 AoE, or movement speed. And I do opt for the 16% increased attack and cast speed if you killed recently for the enchant. And for the flask, I am using movement speed flask, a granite flask, a gold flask, and you want to make sure you have increased effect and you craft on rarity craft on this thing. And then I have a quartz flask to allow me to run through the mobs, and I have attack speed on the suffix. So attack speed suffix, rarity crafted, movement speed suffix, and increased armor suffix. And this build is actually relatively tanky. And you can see here we have 57,000 armor with max capped res, and we even have some bit of chaos res. Now, the biggest problem with this build is you're not spell suppress capped, and you also don't have any max res outside of this 1% fire res. So you will be a little bit susceptible to elemental damage, and that is what will get you killed every single time. And Divination Distillate is used. Make sure to prioritize the quant and rarity roll on it. I could actually get a better Divination Distillate, and I should probably buy it because it's actually a pretty big deal. So overall, this character is very tanky as long as you don't get hit by any huge elemental damage hit. You could potentially also take Imbalanced Guard on Impossible Escape forego the 10% flask effect and take 2% max res and 1% max res here. And it will make your character feel a lot better at 78 to 79% res, which will make a world of difference. Now, you might be wondering what some of this gear looks pretty expensive and what are some budget options. And I'm going to go over what I actually believe are the most expensive pieces. Most expensive pieces, hands down, are going to be the Headhunter. The wand is pretty expensive too. And then the forbidden jewels are the main problem. And then these Watcher's Eyes could also be quite expensive too, depending on what you get. And if you decide to get Vitality Leech's Life. But anyhow, let's go over some of the budget options. So for the budget options, as I've said earlier, you can use Abyssco's Leech with a Rarity Corrupt instead of Headhunter. I think I actually have one right here. But this one right here, 27% Rarity, 5% Quant, and Quant is really, really strong. And the nice part about this is you can actually get 1% Rarity per 15 Rampage kills. So let's say you have 1,000 Rampage kills. This belt is around almost 100% Rarity, and that is a huge bonus over using Headhunter. And I think that's incredibly underrated. So you could potentially have 700% Rarity at 105% Quant with this build. Now, Hemophilia Gloves with Vulnerability Implicit can be used instead of Forbidden Jewels. And I do think after this video, Forbidden Jewels will be very, very expensive if people do decide to play this build. These are probably like 20 Divines each, and they were really, really expensive. But you can use Hemophilia Gloves. This is what people use at League Start. So what you have to do is this allows you to have your attacks cause bleeding. And you can also spec these nodes over here for 30% extra bleed, which makes you have 50% chance to bleed. Now, bleeding enemies you kill explode, dealing 5% of their maximum life as physical damage. So this is pretty much the same as Gratuitous Violence. Gratuitous Violence, I think, is actually, 10% or something? Or maybe it's 5%. Let me check out this thing right here. So for Gratuitous Violence, we have dealing 10%. So actually, it's Hemophilia really like this. I thought it was more. Maybe I took a wrong screenshot. But Hemophilia is 5%. So Hemophilia is a little bit worse, or a good amount worse, but it's the only option you have unless you can spend that much money on the jewels. Now, you can also choose to use Ascetic with a Magic Helmet. So if you want a Magic Helmet, you pretty much just want Magic Rarity on the prefix and then craft on the 45% for the suffix. And we can actually see some people's builds who actually use this thing. So if we go here and Ascetic and go to Champion, there's like no one playing this build. And this guy's name is kind of cool. So he can see here, he has the Ascetic, and you can use the Synthesized Shield. You could choose to go for Reservation Efficiency. You can also go for Avoid Elemental Ailments. I've also seen an Onslaught where you hit something. So you have a lot of different options. And then this helmet right here, you pretty much just go for prefix on the rarity and a suffix crafted rarity, and that's your best bet. But that should help you out in trying to get this build off the ground for a lot cheaper. Now, oh yeah, one last thing, since people always love to ask this. What's the bandits? You kill everything for the bandits. And then for the Pantheons, you want to take Soul of Aracali. Since we are playing Petrified Blood, that means we're kind of weak against dots. So this helps us reduce our damage over time. And then this thing over here makes it so you don't instantly die to bleeds. And as anything, this build is weak to damage over time. So that's why I highly recommend you take those Pantheons. And it will help you out a lot. Now, this is definitely the best Magic Find build after trying out pretty much every single one. It's capable of doing 100% Deli maps. I've actually already done over like 50-80% Deli maps. And you pretty much never ever fail the maps. And the best part is you can pretty much take any one of the Eldritch Altars and never have to worry about the downsides besides one. There's one that is super bad, and that is Eldritch Altar Downside that makes you fire projectiles in random direction. It is the worst thing ever, and it actually has made me lose multiple God Touch because it's just that bad. Now, I didn't go over a playstyle real fast, and I'll go show you how it actually looks like to play. So Corrupting Fever, the way it works is you press it, and then your Kinetic Blast will be able to apply Corrupting Fever. So nice part about this build is when we press this, we'll automatically gain Adrenaline. So we have Adrenaline right now, and then whenever you attack, it will put a bleed on. I think I just did too much damage, and then your Reap is your single target, and you can press that. You pretty much apply the the damage over time debuffs, and then you press Reap whenever you want to do single target, and then you shield charge around, you flame dash for your movement skill, and you just have a good time, and you get a bunch of currency. And you can make sure to put on Blood Rage. But overall, this build is by far the best Magic Find build. out there. I don't really think I can find a better one at this point, but we will try to find different strategies in order to utilize this build to farm it. But let me know down in the comments below if you can find any other Magic Find builds I can try out, and if you've actually played this variant before. But thanks for watching, everyone. I hope you find more Mage Blood, Exalted Orbs, and Divines than me, and see you next time. Bye!